SageTalk. I am so pleased to introduce Scott Edwards to you, who is going to be talking to us about getting back into nature. So, Scott, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Jack. Good morning, everybody. Jack has asked me to do a little Sage Talk. He said on the broad topic of the same as our Elder Pride 2021 is aging on or moving on with grace and ease. And I thought what I should talk about is the benefits of getting into nature and how I find it for myself. And recent research has found that it's good for everybody. And it's not just my imagination, all right? So let's move on, benefits of getting into nature. And so I'm gonna first talk about what I found that the research says nature, how it affects us. And what we found is that nature really reduces the stress, which has an impact on our bodies. We get into a lot of unpleasant environments in the modern age. And these environments that are artificial, not so natural, can lead us to feel sad and helpless. It can also affect our body physiologically, such as elevate our blood pressure and our heart rate, can make us tense. And believe it or not, too much stress can affect your immune system in a negative way. Get into a pleasing environment, it reverses that. So we're going to talk about that. Another nice thing to know about getting into nature is if you're somebody who deals with pain a lot, that getting into nature can actually help not really reduce your pain as much as you're coping with the pain. They found that when we get into nature, we're engrossed by it, and it takes our mind off pain if we're in pain. So it's a distractor for pain, all right? And it also provides a respite for us if we've got a busy mind or know others who have busy minds if we're preoccupied. It gives us energy to do new tasks. Let's talk about a little bit what we call nature deprivation. The researchers have called nature deprivation. What nature deprivation is insufficient time in the natural world. Our species, like every other on Earth, came originally from the natural world. So we really do feel at home in the natural world. And our modern life takes us out of the natural world, and that has been associated with depression, all right? Also, it's been found that people who don't get enough natural time, and one of the key ways we are distracted from natural time, where we're usually spending it if we're not in nature, is by and large, we're in front of screens a lot, like you are now. We'll forgive you this time. We're in front of screens a lot, computers and televisions. All that screen time can really lead to a lack of empathy and a lack of altruism in our view of the world. Social isolation is typically associated with worse subjective well-being, but researchers have found that when you're socially isolated, the best thing to do is to meet other people socially. But they have found that if for some reason you can't do that, if you can get out in nature, that will increase your feeling of well-being just by being in nature. I guess best of all would be go into nature with some friends, and they really have get that feeling of social isolation out of your life. Being in nature or even viewing nature scenes can reduce anger, fear, and increase pleasant feelings. It brings down that high heart rate, high blood pressure I told you can experience if you're out of nature too much, or if you're in stressful man-made lifestyle that we have now. Regardless of our culture, humans find nature pleasing. One study shows that 2/3 of the people who were asked when they want to get away from things, when they want a place where they can, ease their mind, 2/3 of them say they go into nature, right? And in a study by Mind Magazine, 95% of those interviewed said their mood improved after spending time outside, changing from depressed and stressed and anxious to calm and more balanced. And a nice, interesting study that how nature affects kids. I know most of us don't have kids, but some of us probably do. Kids or even grandkids. There's a study by Andrea Taylor that says children with attention deficit hyperactive disorder increase their attention span later in life if they spent more time in nature. So it kind of even calms the minds of people with pathologies. Some more effects in nature. There was a study done in Chicago, and they found that a lot of places, housing projects in Chicago, a lot of them have trees and natural settings, and some of them don't. They found that those people who lived in the housing projects with more trees reported having stronger feelings of unity with their neighbors, more concerned about helping and supporting their neighbors, and had stronger feelings of belonging to the community than those people who lived in projects without trees. In addition to this greater sense of community, there was less street crime in those areas, lower levels of violence, and aggression between domestic partners happened less frequently, right? So they were better able to cope with life in general, despite the stresses of living in poverty. Attention deficit disorder and aggression lessen in natural environments. It is known to increase the rate of healing. And I take this to mean both physiological and psychological. Recent studies show that in a psychiatric unit that patients who had access to natural settings, green and blue colors of nature, had reduced feelings of isolation. They had more calm and a better mood. All right, pioneers. There's some pioneers in this work, married couple, Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, who studied the subject that we're discussing today. And they devised what's called attention restoration theory. And they found that if people were in natural environments more often, their attention span was improved. And more not than just being improved, it was their attention required less effort on their behalf to pay attention to whatever they were doing. And this being in nature made them more relaxed, and their mind more relaxed and their body more relaxed. Spending time in nature can act as a balm for your busy brains, they said. And they reported that green spaces near schools promoted cognitive development in the students. Green views near children's home promoted better self-control behaviors. And experiments have found that being exposed to natural environment improves your memory, your cognitive flexibility, your ability to control your attention. And while exposed to nature in urban environments, as compared to being exposed to urban environments, which was linked to more poor attention deficits, further attention deficits. Effects of being in nature. So far when we talked about nature, we didn't really say, I'm assuming you might have assumed I was talking about visual. And in a lot of cases I was. But they have found that even the sound of nature is recuperative. So think about that. You could, if you ever need to listen to sounds of nature and you can't get into nature, go to YouTube. They have a lot of, they have a handful of tapes that are just nature being played in the background. And I've often done this at work, played the birds, the waterfalls, and it makes you for a more calming environment. It's not as good as being there in nature, but you can mimic nature to the best of your ability and have some positive effect. All right. They found that people listening to nature sound like crickets or waves crashing had performed better on cognitive tests than those who were listening to urban sounds and traffic. They found that children who live in neighborhoods with more green space had reduced risk of many psychiatric disorders, including depression, mood disorders, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and most impressive to me is substance use disorders. all right? Other experiments found that elementary children acted more pro-socially with their classmates and with strangers after a field trip into nature as compared to going to a field trip, maybe to a building like a museum or a factory. People who are in nature had more what's called eudynamic well-being, which means not only were they happy and felt contentment, but they also felt they had a purpose in life and that they were blessed and flourishing. My favorite research that I read through the whole, while researching this topic for you, was this next one about Japanese researchers who studied the effects of what they called forest bathing, which is a nice name for taking a walk in the woods. But they took a walk in the woods with people, and what they decided, because they suspected that that aerosols and stuff, since the nature and the trees and the other plants gave were having a positive effect on the body. And so what they decided to do is they would do blood and saw what the natural killer cell level in each study person's blood levels were. And what natural killer cells are cells in the body that help fight infection and help the prevention of the growth of tumors or initiation of tumors. So they took the natural killer cell level, they took a walk into the woods, and they happened to use a forest in Japan that was mostly cedar. After the walk, they took blood again and found that indeed the natural killer cells had elevated. Natural killer cells had elevated. So they thought, I think it's something in the trees are giving off. They suspected it might be, well, what they did is they then took cedar essential oil and put it in a hotel room. And before the people went in to sleep the night, they did the natural killer cell levels. They went and slept in a room that had the cedar essential oil, took the blood level again, and indeed the natural killer cells had elevated. So this is hard evidence that being in nature is good for us, both physiologically as well as psychologically. So how much time do we need to spend? Because none of us, I don't think any of you can live in the woods, but no, maybe there's somebody. But we have our modern lifestyle that we're kind of stuck with. So we can't spend the whole time in the woods, so are walking in the beach. So they did research and they came up with that as long as you spend at least 120 minutes a week in nature, then you'll get the full benefits of nature. And the nice thing about this is you do not have to spend your 120 minutes all at once. If your schedule doesn't allow it, you can go 20 minutes 6 times a week or something like this. The more natural space and the more away from modernization, the better. However, that does bring up the question. Some of us can't get away from modernization too easily because it takes time. It takes an automobile, which costs money to run. And also, a lot of us have other physical limitations where, we just cannot do a lot of walking. So we're going to talk a little bit about some alternatives to nature. Now, research has shown that you put a plant in your office, in your hospital room, in the school, and it has a significant impact on lowering anxiety in the people who are in the room. Furthermore, if you can't get out into nature, you can put a nature scene somewhere in your environment. And that could be a big screen. You could turn on a big natural scene and put it on your television. You can get a big picture in the wall. And if you have a big window and a natural scene outside, you can keep that window open a lot. They are not quite as good, but they are still beneficial, all right? And I think about the last 3 dentists I've gone to in last, I don't know how many years, but I recall after I saw this research that, hey, I have all 3 of my last 3 dentists had a big natural scene in front of every chair. And so I think the dentists were onto something about how to help their patients reduce anxiety. All right. Dr. Matthew White, I'm basically repeating myself, has concluded that real is best, but a virtual reality will do. All right. So, alternatives to nature. Let's say you have a break at work. Can you get to a remote wilderness? No. Then take a 30-minute walk. 30-minute walk 5 times a day, that's 150 minutes already. And take it down a tree-lined street or into a park near the place where you work, if that's possible. That's still nature, that's still green, and hopefully your sky is blue too. All right, do that whenever you can. So here's what I want you to do. I talked a little bit about what I do to get into nature. I like to hike. I want to talk about how to plan around what gets in your way from getting into nature. I like to hike, but hiking for me is at least a 40-minute drive. Luckily, I have a car and I have 2 days a week off. So I can go maybe once or twice a month because, you know, even on weekends, I got to do other things that are not related to work, right? It can be time consuming. I used to live in Los Angeles where to get to the trail was about 15 minutes. Now I live close to the Sierra Nevadas, but it's still further than it used to be to get to a trail. It's about 40 minutes to an hour. So I can't do it as often as I used to. What can I do instead? I can walk, choose a tree-lined street or go to the park. I can do that several times a day. I've been doing it more this week because I'm conscious of it because I'm having to do this talk. Even in the dark, I can walk on the tree-lined street. I can ride my bike, which I haven't done much of. But if I were to ride my bike, again, pick the treesiest or greenest path you can find. Other things you can do, and this may be good news for some of you, you can get out into your yard and garden. All right, pulling the weeds, planting flowers, picking any vegetables you might be growing is getting back into nature, and it counts as nature time, and it does have a good effect on you. If you don't have a yard, maybe you can do house plants. You can put a little garden, or you can just put house plants on if you have a balcony in an apartment or condominium. Or you can put houseplants in your house. Remember the effects of a plant in the room decreases anxiety. You can buy some of those indoor fountains. I've heard them before, and I always find them very pleasant, running water, and I've seen them in people's homes. So that can mimic the nature. Once again, on the internet, you can go to YouTube and play nature sounds, or you can get pictures of nature. All right. So what I have done is I put on what I do to get into nature on our Facebook page that Reverend Jack is going to tell you the address to that pretty quick. I put what I do and things I think I might be able to do to even increase my time in nature if possible. I'm hoping you'll join me with that, and we can start a conversation on the Elder Pride Facebook page about, tell me, what are you doing? Do you think you're doing enough? Do you think you need more or would like more? And how you plan to go about it? What are your limitations and how you're going to get around them? All righty. So I hope to see you posting there with me. And that is my presentation. We talked about how nature helps you, how being out of nature can harm you. And we talked about nature really, I don't know if I stress it, but where there's blue and there's green, water, sky, and plants is what you want to get yourself into. And then we talked about how to get around things that are hindering your exposure to nature. Reverend Jack?
All right. Thank you so much, Scott. And I just want to remind folks that if you go to www.facebook.com/Elder Pride for me, that's the number 4, Elder Pride for Me, you'll find our Elder Pride Facebook page. You can also go to our website at www.elderprideforme.org. And if you'd like, you can go to the page that's titled Blogs, Documents, and More, and you'll see all the slides from Scott's presentation today. So you'll be able to download them, take a look at them at your leisure, and create your plan for getting back into nature.